Hi, everyone. This is Jose Palomino with another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. And today's guest is CEO of Duperon Corporation, Tammy Bernier. And we're going to discuss how to actually accelerate your growth through using the most critical resource you have, which is your people. So get ready to hear some key principles and examples of how paying attention to your critical resource, your people, will pay huge dividends in creating a better workplace for those people and creating better outcomes for your customers. So listen closely as we invite Tammy to join our show. Well, welcome, Tammy, to the Revenue Throughput Podcast.
Thank you.
Well, Tammy, one thing that's very helpful for our listening audience, and they know this, those who listen to this regularly, this show regularly, I always like to have our guests just describe briefly, identify themselves, who they're with, and who they serve. And that gives us a nice context here for our show.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. My name is Tammy Bernier. I'm the CEO of Duperon Corporation, and we are across the US, North America, and New Zealand, newly in Colombia. We're an international company. We serve the water and wastewater industry, something we feel very, very proud to do. Our water heroes that make sure we have clean water and that water works for people.
Well, and do you sell equipment for purification or how
Oh,
does
yes,
that
yeah. So how we do that is we create what we call liquid solid separation equipment, but how most people would think of it as filters that removes mostly coarse materials out of the water in stormwater, wastewater, industrial applications, so that the other processes or the pumps, turbines can work.
Okay, so there's no point like running like pebbles through turbines that could actually be messed up.
Or trees or logs.
trees.
Yeah, so we're doing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do some quite big things, and but we just make sure that water processes can work, or in the case of floods, you have to have those pumps online. And we saw that really in Katrina and Rita when those hurricanes hit. We had a lot of product there and we're able to keep pump stations moving.
Wow. What's interesting about that though, Tammy, is just the idea of being like aligned with water, right? Like one of like the essential element of life, right? Other than air, I guess air and water would be the two things.
Yeah.
And so I just wonder, are there ever moments of reflection when you think back and say, gee, we actually help water happen for people and stuff?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot I could say about that. It's something that if you went to the halls of our building, it's clear. You come into our lobby, you recognize that you are clearly in someone's dream, that we're celebrating that dream, that we're in the world of water. Whether we're in Little Saginaw, Michigan, we are in the world of water. So absolutely, it's something that impassions all of us who work there.
Wow. So let me jump off that point, because we've had some conversation before and around a topic that every owner, especially owners who want to make stuff happen with a team, understand is necessary, but sometimes feel a little skittish about embracing it. And that is corporate culture or company culture and so on. And you've been very intentional in terms of developing a culture for your company. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey? Was that something you came into the business always knowing you wanted to do? Or is that something you kind of realized, gee, I guess I do work on that, and then it became more overt?
Well, I think I have always had a sense and a dream of what business could be. So that's me personally. And back in 96, 93, I came into what was my father's business in really quite dire straits. So literally the industry changed overnight, and he was looking at losing everything. And so, and I'm telling this story very deliberately because I think what's happening right now is culture is sort of like mission, vision, purpose. It's sort of like you punch those cards and, you got it. The culture came for us in this terrible I can really honestly say the most difficult professional and personal experience of being in $1 million hole, nowhere to go, no way to get there, like no possible way to come out of that hole that we could see. And we tried everything. We even tried bankruptcy. We were too poor to be bankrupt. We couldn't do bankruptcy, which is a sad state. But we, you know, when you're open, somehow when you're in crisis, you open yourself to like anything that would work. And we really, through a book called E-Myth, we did this primary aim exercise, and we really nailed what would make it worth it to hold the course, to honor the trust given us. And so we set up this dream of being $100 million company. And I want you to get something, Jose, that dream was like, there's 50 states, but that's not counting international, you know, times 2 million. I think we could do that. It didn't matter the number. It wasn't honoring a number. It was honoring an expression of impact for us. And what Dad and I did very clearly, we're aligned on, we knew we had to make a difference. And we created some values out of that. And, you know, we wanted endless opportunity for people. So we knew that we were people that needed to grow. We needed to have a place where people got to use their talents and their gifts. And we had to have high integrity and to be a good company. And the way we say that is you'll like working with us, not like your milk toast. It's nothing that impractical. Is really orienting ourselves to serving. And I think that has power in itself. It brings us to a higher part of ourselves. So when we started that dream, we now became the broke level of $100 million company, right? Okay. And don't worry, we're not there yet. We're working on it though. But you know, we became something else. We started to choose differently. And what started to happen is that in the norms of being what we said, in the practices, in the yes, this, not that, this absolutely does not fit what we said we'd be. This absolutely does. We started to grow this culture. And, you know, I make it very clear. It wasn't like today we talk about it and we, you know, it's vision.
It's on the plaque, right? The plaque over the door.
No, and it came because it came out of crisis for us. It was an existential way of being. Mm-hmm. It was the way that we were going to give what we wanted to give to the world. So being in water, we did feel we clicked right into a purpose that made a difference. Being in manufacturing, which I love because we take ideas and create real substantive things that make a difference in the world. So the culture evolved, and something neat about dreams is they actually sort of evolve us. You know, they use us. We're probably undeveloped to that dream still. We're still working on all the ways to make that work. But I will say that the culture that was created out of that dream then has been an unbelievable power and impact to who we are today.
And what's really interesting about that, Tammy, and thank you for sharing so transparently your journey and your story there.
Yeah.
What's exciting to me as an entrepreneur, lifetime entrepreneur, is knowing that came about like out of the fire. Like it didn't come from the plenty, it came from the lack, right? And in that moment, you all had kind of I'm sure there was some decision points, like, do we move on or do we just do something else for a living? And so you decided to move on, move forward. And I'm sure because your company's grown a lot over the years. And that's one of the reasons I think it's particularly fascinating how you've leveraged even culture to be perhaps something that helps you grow. But the original team, besides yourself and your dad, you know, you were kind of deeply invested. It's family. It's, you know, it's the deepest level of connection you can have. But how did the original team respond to like the crisis, the need for change? Did everybody make the turn with you, or were there some folks that says, you know what, I'm out. This is like just way too risky for my blood. I need to go get a job somewhere else.
Yeah, it wasn't quite like that, because by the time I came in, there really was just my father, myself, and a part-time employee. It had gone down to, you know, like, okay, this is it. So as far as making the turn, that was not really a consideration. And we, over the years, have had people come and go. And uniquely, I think, because we believe in this power of a dream, as people come, we really look for values alignment. We actually hire for that, and we will ask them, okay, what's your dream? What do you want? You know, what's going to make it worth it in life for them? Because we know there's a place where we're authentically ourselves. And then we ask them to look to see, we're looking together to see if it fits. Like, is this something that they can see themselves and their dreams, their passions, their talents in being a part of? So respecting when that is a yes, respecting when that is a no. We say good people come and good people go. But if their dream carries them to the next piece, we have learned, even though I would say originally it was pretty hard to let go of people, you know, like you want to hold on, they're your people, your team, the people you love. But yeah, so it's a way of trusting who people essentially are, I think.
Hey, pardon the interruption, it'll just be a beat. We want to tell you about something that's really exciting, and it might be very exciting to you if you're the owner, CEO, leader of a B2B company, roughly with $2 to $20 million in revenue, and you feel a little bit stuck. You know what I mean? Sales are a little flat, maybe even declining, challenged. Margins are being squeezed. Sales cycles seem to be lengthening, and lead flow is uncertain. We've designed a program based on over a dozen years of us doing exactly this for many B2B companies. It's called the Competitive Edge Program, and you can learn more about it at valueprop.com/edge. Tells you all about the program. It's a 90-day program, really focused on helping you sharpen your value proposition, aligning your value delivery, making sure your marketing program is doing what it has to do if you're in B2B, which is generate opportunities, and make sure your sales process is tight so that you can convert those opportunities into sales. So with that note, let's get back to an exciting episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Well, that's interesting, because I think there's a lot of people that when you go down that road exploring it, and probably doing it through series of processes and conversations and so on before somebody joins your team, they're gauging, because again, they've gone through the process where somebody asks similar questions but don't really mean it.
Yeah.
Or ask it just because it's some organizational development consultant said these are 10 questions you should ask and make sure you have alignment and so on. But what I get talking to you, Tammy, is how heartfelt this is, right?
Yeah.
How personal it really is. So you talk about people pursuing their dream.
Yes.
So you have a team and you say, listen, you can pursue all the dream you want. I just need you to do these things so we can make the business successful. How do you make room for being a place that people can come and actually see themselves grow and not just serve the enterprise?
Yeah. Well, and I really want to point to something, because I recognize much of what I'm saying may seem like, yeah, you can't run a business that way. And yet I would probably defy that the greatest businesses that built were run in some level of this way, where we capture the heart and imaginations of people, right? And together they become something more. And so we deliberately do that. So I know it sounds real, it doesn't sound practical, but let's talk about the practicalities, what it looks like. So we have accountabilities, right? We hold up and are counted on for the role that we've said yes to, and that people count on us. And we have a bunch of structures in place to learn how to do that very well, and be a person of our word around what we've agreed to do and be counted on. But I would say that the biggest principle, when you are allowing somebody to come fully themselves, but not what I call the teeny tinies of themselves, but up to something with people, up to something bigger than yourself. And you create an environment where you lose a lot of the unnecessary power plays and frictions, where people can be authentic. We can care for each other. We can get up under each other. We can be straight when it's not working. There's a lot of trust. it creates an agility and energy in the team that you cannot force. And I think when you're thinking from top-down management, I say there is a certain, like, you're slicing off
Right.
of each other, and we do team, but only in this very regulated way. But if you really have unleashed the hearts and passions and the voice and the creativity and the ways people see it, there's a dynamic and a catalyst that comes to the team that is pretty much unstoppable. And I'll give you a boots on the ground experience, just so you understand what this possibility unleashes. So we had one of our service guys in Ohio. In New York, one of our customers is down. They have a 100-year, 500-year event, and their plant is down. This is a major problem for them because it's in a wastewater plant, and what happens if you flood those. Sewage goes, and it
has to go somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's dangerous, right? It's very dangerous for people. So unbeknownst to any leader in the company, nobody was coaching anybody to do that, but because we are so clear who we are and who we be in the world, we know exactly what to do. So think of us as a Navy SEAL team, right?
Okay.
But our project manager, our service person, the engineer on the project, the team that was accountable facing that customer, and the service person who rerouted, drove all night, got there at, 6 a.m, got busy, started to get the equipment working. That all happened before a leader in the company, executives, showed up in the door. We were reported to as a function of people knowing so clearly who we are for a customer, so clearly what our purpose is, how we affect the world, and what our equipment does, that we didn't have to coach people to do that. And they had such faith in our integrity as leaders that they knew that they were 100% supported. And so there, you see what that energy does, gives you freedom to act.
Because I could see the exact alternative situation, which is, gee, we should probably get to New York. Well, I don't know. Until we talk to our boss, we don't know if we're going to get the travel expense approved. And so on. And then that person's afraid to get maybe even at the level of your attention to finally approve something. Meanwhile, hours have been lost, and that moment is lost. And also I could see a team maybe saying, well, I'm sure this is important, so let's do it. And then getting kind of browbeat after the fact. How much emergency hotel rooms and stuff, who told you we could pay for that? And I've coached owners who are that persnickety about the expense. And yes, you have to watch cash. But you're saying watching the mission lived out is more important and will ultimately create more opportunity, more cash.
And it's not either or, because one of the things that I think people get confused about is being mission means, that you're not accountable for the viability of the company or cash or all of it. I am clear that they probably explored all the options, and they could have put them on a plane, they could have, whatever those things were. They were still accountable for the overall well-being of the company as well as really being clear in the mission. So I think the thing when you have culture that so many people maybe misinterpret is that you get really good at knowing who to be in a moment. So think of a Navy SEAL team, or I use like the Blue Water Angels or something, because they're so astonishing to us as human beings, right? How disciplined, how well organized they are by what they are. When you live culture, and in ours, what I like to say is that you get the privilege of being who we always dreamed of being, like wholehearted, able to cause a difference, right? And there are times when that shows up in our company that brings me to tears. I'm blown away by who human beings are when we can be clear and allow for that. but the culture tells you who you're being. It didn't mean it was a free-for-all. It didn't mean, it gives you the norms and practices. And because when you really live it, everybody knows what to do. And if you listen to, I watch a lot of podcasts, I read, books, all that, almost all of them, Hewlett Packard, they rose something within them that went beyond. And sometimes, under some really imperfect leadership, like really, I would call them jerks, like big personalities and showmen.
I mean, well, yes,
but they were able to create purpose and mission and culture in a way that it totally fed the excellence of what they're trying to achieve.
Well, one thing that particularly fascinates me about this, Tammy, is the best company I ever worked for as an employee is now part of Hewlett Packard. Interesting, you mentioned that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, years ago. They made fault-tolerant computers, a company called Tandem Computers. They were one of the founders of the Silicon Valley. And by the time I joined the company, they had 10,000 employees. And they had an amazing culture. And one of the things I started out on the technical side, they trained you and they drilled you on it. I mean, it was like 8 weeks or 12 weeks of boot camp, and they drilled you on this idea of never die alone. And so never die alone became a crime. It was drilled into all of us so that if you run into a problem, these are $1 million systems. If you run into a problem with a client, that you ask for help. Don't try to be the hero and solve it yourself. If you don't know what you're doing, ask for help. So I got drilled in again and again, and so many other things they did around culture. So now when I deal with an owner-led business that has a staff of 30, not 10,000, I'm saying if those folks could figure out with 10,000 people how to create a positive culture with a definite propensity for action and for thinking about what was good for the customer. If you have 30 people, you can do it. It can be done. That's always been in my back of my mind all these years since, is why aren't more organizations just a better place to work? And you said your rallying cry is kind of, you'll like working with us. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is sort of the filter by which we check in all the time. So if we have an employee, let's say we have an employee conflict, if we have certain policies, if we have, is this, and it doesn't mean there's a stand for excellence in all of it. So your context is so important. Just like what you said about that company, they were able to create accountability of never die alone.
Right.
They were able to be, so a culture actually, and this is what I think companies are worried about right now with, remote workplaces, is how do you create a space where people can count on each other and know who to be and what to do for each other. And, we're challenged with that too, in that, how do we care about people that are in another state? How do we, when we're not going to maybe have some of those engagements? But it is practical. It is the same as if you were going in a life-saving drill. I mean, you want to know that, what the play is. You want to know who the people are next to you to do that. We just did some culture training in our company. And I think it is an inherent thing that if you go to values or real contribution, you sacrifice business. I am saying is it puts your business on steroids, because you do not have a mind thinking, controlling, driving down. I remember being in a CEO roundtable and they said, well, how do you get your people to engage? How do you empower them? I said, well, first you don't empower. They have power. Mostly you want to create an environment where there's enough trust and caring that they'll bring more of themselves to play, that, that they're invited to say it. I mean, we have people who, our president, he is questioned. And this might be a product guy questioning a business decision, or our HR person, that we have a right to be a voice and to create together. And so it's a little bit like herding cats. It's not as, a dictatorship is far more efficient. But, you know, the minute you turn, it becomes something else too, right?
Right. Well, the thing is too, that efficiency often, unless you just happen to have like, you have figured out a way in your business to spin lead into gold, it will basically efficiently keep you at the status quo. Because what you're describing here is saying, the biggest and the most powerful like resource any organization has is its people. But only if you tap into it and allow your people to be who they could otherwise be. Because I've seen bosses where they shut down a person from trying to offer an opinion, and that person still has good opinions and good insights, but they'll never share it again.
No, and I'll tell you a story. My dad started a side company called Duperon Education, and in it, he teaches people to invent, because the products we sell, my father invented. And and this was so troubling to me, because to me it's a lose, it's a fail in being a business. There was he spoke to a bunch of students. He was doing a couple of sessions with them, and he asked them to go and think of something that would improve where they work today. So these were, students that mostly came back to school. So they came back and they started sharing these ideas that were pretty amazing ideas. And he asked this question, and I would challenge anybody who hasn't talked about culture is to ask this question. How many of you actually shared your idea with your employer? Zero.
Wow.
And it gave me chills. And I'm thinking, all that wasted potential. And for me, that is the saddest thing of all, is if we have human beings in our businesses that we've turned them into little automaton human doings with their little self. They gotta lose their fatherhood, their passion for fishing, their whatever at the door. They get to be this little tiny segment aspect of a human, and show up at work. It's such a, there's something else available when people get to be.
Well, and we're not actually that super compartmentalized. In other words, you take all those other parts that make me, in theory, you're going to be left with only that part which people want to pay for, but that's not really what happens, because you're cutting away from, it's this integrated whole, either is or isn't.
Yeah, it's the essence, right? It's the essence of who you are. And it's interesting because I love Luann in our HR department, who literally, I've had people come up to me and say, my life has been changed because I interviewed with your company. Because we ask these compelling questions like, what are you about? What do you want to do? What is in your heart to contribute? What have you loved doing in the past? That type of thing. And she said, one of the questions she asks our new hires is, in their 90 days, she'll meet with them at 30 days or whatever, have we been who we said we would be? And you know what? It made me almost cry, really, because to me, when I see the win of what business can be, it makes me very excited. And they said, you're so much more than what you say.
Wow.
They've never been in a place. One gentleman who had come from a very large telecommunications company, after about 6 months, he stood up in a company meeting. I can't remember if it was training or another thing we do, which is called takeoff. And he said, I've been here for 6 months and I keep looking for the power plays. Like, who do you not, go? Where's your spot? All the things he had been trained well in this very typical culture of the company. And he said, you don't have one. Like, every single person here wants me to succeed. I can go anywhere. And I hear this repeatedly. You can't fake that. You can't make that. You can't even tell somebody that's the only way you get to be here. That's inherent humanity. That's inherent when allowed to play. And I mean, if I'm communicating at all, imagine what gets achieved inside of that. It is not utopia. Yeah, right. You try, you swing, you lose, you mess up, right? Right. But it is I don't see any other way of being. And whenever I hear a business, you know, like in conscious capitalism, be
Right.
good, who have learned how to create something that's greater than them, than any one individual or themselves, it's incredible.
That is exciting. And so, Tammy, in the few minutes we have remaining, I did want to ask you a connected question to that.
Yeah.
Because so far we've explored kind of how to work in that environment, how to interact, how to lead. A lot of these things clearly very exciting. And I think for anyone listening who's an owner of a business may think, well, gee, you know, that's something I like. I wish my place was like that. But I just want to connect one last dot on this, which is, okay, how does that show up? How does that create value, if it does, for customers?
Oh,
Outside your walls, whether virtual or physical walls, outside your walls, how does any of that? Okay, that's great. You're all happy now on the island. Right?
oh, anybody of our team listening to this saying, are you kidding me? It's work.
Right, it's work.
You know,
right.
we're doing stuff here. It's yeah.
Right,
We're not singing Kumbaya.
Right, but how does that translate then to customers as a practical reality?
So our rep agency says we're one of the most responsive principals they have. So we have independent rep agencies, sales agencies. We have customers that have never worked with anybody like you, that is so for me, that checks all the boxes, that causes and serves. I have been in a trade show booth and had customers who had, you know, really rotten problems, because unfortunately water is an unwieldy little thing that does what it wants to do. And, you know, sometimes is hard to figure out. And who our team was in that time of trouble, they had never experienced it. So there's something in a you and me business model where you have humans with full tanks that inherently overflow to service and contribution to others. And when your customer gets that, even in the hard times, when they see you being, you know, really in service of what they're trying to achieve. And as I said, water is not, it has a lot of obviously technology, but it, you know, you can be on one site and in this one channel of 10, it does something totally different. So you need all good minds, but being able to hear a customer and listen to what they need and to help create solutions together. Can you imagine what that feels like as a customer?
Yeah, especially since in many industrial categories, that's not a common way for suppliers, vendors to deal. It's very minimalistic. You got what you ordered, that's that. But that next level of problem solving, especially in a world which is very, no pun intended, very fluid, is
good pun though.
Good pun anyway. No, that makes a lot of sense. Why that would really connect for somebody to say, gee, and you can't make your team do that. Like you can't do that top down, like you said,
you can't empower them.
Right.
It's that they're filled up enough in their own sense of personhood and personal power that they can actually deliver that through their personality, through their style, you know, through their individual ways of being. But that part that overflows to service and contribution, yeah. And when that happens, when a customer does that or a team member does that active service with another team member, we email the entire company with acknowledgement. We celebrate it, we recognize it, we grow it, and celebrate the win. And we feel that people have won our mission. They have brought the mission home when they do that.
Well, that's fantastic. Tammy, this has been exciting for me as a lifetime business person. You know, I love this stuff. So this is really exciting. Thank you for sharing with our audience, really just your journey. And if somebody listening now said, gee, this sounds very interesting, I'd like to know a little bit more about Tammy, about your business, where should they go to find out more?
You can reach me at my email, which is tbernier@duperon.com. I think you're going to have that down, or our website, www.duperon, duperon.com. You can try me on LinkedIn, but I am a lousy monitor of LinkedIn. So I would
Okay.
not, I would probably not go there.
No, I appreciate that. So Tammy, once again, just on behalf of all of us listening to this, thank you once again for being on the Revenue Throughput podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you for what you're doing, Jose. Thank
My
you.
pleasure. My pleasure. Hey, thanks for listening to another episode of the Revenue Throughput podcast. If you like this episode and if you like the series, make sure you subscribe below. And also, if you liked it, please do review it. When people are looking for something exciting to listen to, especially the kind of content we're bringing, which is practical insights for B2B companies, this is a place and a free resource that they can take advantage of. Let them know about it with your review. So subscribe, review, enjoy. Thanks again.